Welcome back to the show. Welcome back to another episode of Coast to Coast Sports. Today we are recapping the first and second rounds of the women's basketball tournament. We're going to go through each of the four regions, beginning with the Fort Worth region. Let's get going, man. This region, UConn is the team to beat in this region. They are the team to beat in the entire tournament. But looking at Fort Worth region number one, there's actually two regions in Fort Worth. Fort Worth 1 is what we're going to get started with. And yeah, UConn's the team to beat. They beat UTSA 90-52, and then they beat number 9 seeded Syracuse 98-45. Syracuse took down Iowa State in a very close game between the 8 and 9 seeds. Syracuse ultimately winning 72-63 in that one. It was actually a pretty good game. Over below them in the bracket, Maryland taking down Murray State in a blowout 99-67. And North Carolina also blowing out Western Illinois 82-51. That set up a 5-4 showdown between North Carolina and Maryland, which saw North Carolina get the win 74-66, an 8-point win for UNC. And so now North Carolina has the pleasure of being the next team to play UConn. They'll take on UConn in the Sweet 16 on Saturday, I believe that game is. It's going to be a rough one for North Carolina. I think UConn is going to cream through them and continuing to roll into the Elite Eight. Down to the bottom half of the Fort Worth bracket, Notre Dame defeated Fairfield 79-60, and Ohio State cruised past Howard 75-54. That set up the Irish against the Buckeyes, one of the best football matchups you're going to find. The number 6 seeded Notre Dame Fighting Irish upsetting Ohio State 83-73. So Notre Dame, one of the lowest seeds to move into the Sweet 16, they are there. And at the bottom of the bracket, Illinois defeating Colorado 66-57, and Vanderbilt taking down High Point 102-61. Shout out to High Point for getting into both the men's and women's brackets. And it was Vanderbilt who defeated Illinois in the round of 32, winning 75-57. So in the Sweet 16, it'll be Notre Dame against Vanderbilt. That's a Fort Worth bracket. UConn definitely will get out of the Fort Worth Section 1. I believe UConn, they are the best team in this field. I think they are the clear favorites to win the entire tournament. I think UNC is going to have a rough one going up against UConn. That's my opinion. And moving on to the Sacramento 4 portion of the bracket, this one of two rounds in Sacramento. Talking about South Carolina, they're the team to be over here. The number 1 seed South Carolina took on the number 16 seed Southern and held them to just 34 points. The final score 103-34 was the score there. So South Carolina moving on. Then right below them, USC against Clemson in probably the best game of the first round. USC very, very closely wins that game, 71-67. Let's set up USC against South Carolina. Usually that would be a really good game. USC versus USC. Southern California usually tends to be pretty good at women's basketball. Not this year. The number 9 seeded Trojans losing 101-61 against the South Carolina Gamecocks. So South Carolina is headed into the Sweet 16. Below them in the bracket, Michigan State barely beat Colorado State in the first round, 65-62. Meanwhile, Oklahoma cruising past Idaho, winning 89-59. And then Oklahoma did beat Michigan State as well, 77-71. So the Sweet 16 game there will be South Carolina against Oklahoma. South Carolina Gamecocks are going to be the heavy favorites to beat out the Sooners. But Oklahoma, they'll have a fighting chance, I think. Down in the bottom half of the bracket, Washington defeating South Dakota State 72-54. Meanwhile, TCU destroys UC San Diego 86-40. Virginia beating Georgia 82-73, and Iowa beating FDU in a very low-scoring game, winning 58-48. That set up a round of 32 games between TCU and Washington and Virginia, Iowa, and both of those games really did deliver. Virginia defeating Iowa 83-75. They become the lowest seed ever, I believe, to reach the Sweet 16, as they are a 10 seed. Never before has a 10 seed reached the Sweet 16 in the women's side of the bracket. It's always been 1 through 9s. So Virginia making history there. They also become the first team ever to make the Sweet 16 after being part of the first 4, because they were among the first 4. Virginia defeated Arizona State 57-55 just to get there. And then they beat the number 2 seeded Iowa 83-75. Meanwhile, on the other side of the bracket, TCU defeating Washington in a very narrow showdown, 62-59. It sets up a TCU Horned Frogs against the Virginia Cavaliers in the Sweet 16. Moving on to the other side of the Sacramento bracket, in Sacramento 2, UCLA, they have been cruising. They beat Cal Baptist 96-43, and then they beat Oklahoma State 87-68. UCLA looks very, very good right now, and so far, they've probably been the best team in the tournament outside of UConn. I do believe that, for a team like UCLA to win, they're going to have to prove it by beating UConn in the finals. They might be able to get there. Oklahoma State, by the way, they beat Princeton in the first round, 82-68. Down below them, Ole Miss took down Gonzaga 81-66. Gonzaga really good for the men's, not as great for the women's, as they lose in the first round. And Minnesota defeating Green Bay 75-58. Then we had Baylor against Nebraska. Baylor winning a close one, 67-62. And Duke taking down Charleston 81-64. In the Baylor-Duke game, Duke defeating Baylor 69-46. And at the bottom of the bracket, Texas Tech defeated Villanova 57-52, and LSU absolutely turned it on against Jacksonville. They won 116-58. That set up a Texas Tech against LSU matchup, and LSU again rolled through Texas Tech. They won 101-47. So in the Sweet 16, we are going to see Duke against LSU. We're also going to see UCLA, Minnesota. So a 1-4, UCLA and Minnesota. Duke, LSU, that's a 3-2. I do expect UCLA and LSU to cruise in those two games. I don't think Minnesota and Duke really have much of a chance. And then we're going to see probably the two best offenses in this tournament, LSU and UCLA, battle it out in the Elite Eight. And that's the issue for them, is that, LSU probably wishes they were a 1 seed, because they're going to have to take down UCLA in the Elite Eight if they want to get to the Final Four. UConn, I think they're the third best offense, but I think UConn is the most well-rounded team in the tournament. But UCLA and LSU, probably the two best offenses in women's college basketball. And we're going to see hopefully we're going to see a really great Elite Eight showdown between those two teams. I'm looking forward to it. And finally, move back over to Fort Worth on the other side of the bracket. Texas kind of gets luck of the draw here. They get to play in their home state, and they have been doing very well. They beat Missouri State 87-45 in the first round. That set them up with a matchup against Oregon, who themselves beat Virginia Tech 70-60. Texas against Oregon, it was a good game. Texas ends up pulling away. They win 100-58. Meanwhile, Kentucky beating James Madison 71-56, and West Virginia beating Miami, Ohio 82-54. Shout out to Miami, Ohio, getting in on both the men's and women's side as well. In the 5-4 game, Kentucky beat West Virginia, in a really, really tight one. Kentucky winning 74-73. And that sets up a Texas versus Kentucky game, in which I would say Kentucky might actually have a decent chance. I think they've played really good defense in this tournament. If they can hold the Texas offense to below 85 points, Kentucky's going to have a chance. I still would take Texas to win that. But again, I think Kentucky, they're live dogs in that game. On the bottom half of the bracket, Alabama defeating Rhode Island 68-55, and Louisville beating Vermont 72-52. So the northeastern tiny little states of Rhode Island and Vermont, again, shout out for getting there, but not able to make a run. Sets up an Alabama-Louisville game, in which another 1-point game, really, really tight. Louisville Cardinals move on. They win 69-68. And down at the very bottom of the bracket, Michigan defeated Holy Cross 83-48, while NC State moved on with a win over Tennessee 76-61. Sets up a Michigan against NC State, and it was Michigan who rolled through NC State. They win 92-63. And that's going to set up another Sweet 16 showdown, another 3-2 showdown between Louisville, the 3 seed, and Michigan, the 2 seed. Should be a really fun one. I would take Michigan, but I think it'll be close, but I think Michigan has a better offense than Louisville, and I think that will be the difference. Moving over to the NFL, we have some news about Travis Kelce. It does appear that Travis Kelce, he intends to continue playing, and he signed a 3-year deal with the Chiefs to do it. This was kind of a shocker to me, honestly. I did not expect to see Travis Kelce signing a 3-year deal. It's a $57.7 million contract. To me, I would say, I thought he was going to be done after maybe 1, maybe 2 more years. But yeah, the $3 million the 3-year deal makes it sound like he intends to play for longer. Now, I guess people are saying it's really more like a 1-year deal. He's going to make $12 million fully guaranteed. The contract gives him the veterans minimum in 2027 and 2028. The Chiefs would be on the hook for $40 million in fully guaranteed money in June 7th, 2027. So they'd have to void the deal. I don't know. It seems to me it's weird. If he wants to keep playing, they're saying he's probably not going to get all that money. I don't know. He's in a de facto $12 million deal where he can make $3 million in incentives. The other $40 million is a bonus, I guess, a signing bonus. I don't know. But either way, that's what was being reported. Like I said, I don't see him playing for 3 more years. I just don't, man. That seems like a long time. Or he's about to get married. He's getting older. He's not the player he once was. Mahomes is not, as dominant. The Chiefs are not as dominant. But hey, maybe he really wants to go out with the Super Bowl ring, and so in that case, he's just going to keep on playing until he gets one. That might be what his goal is here. I don't know. Finally, I want to talk about this Jalen Waddle trade because the Dolphins have traded Jalen Waddle. He is now a member of the Denver Broncos. It's been exchanged for a 2026 fourth round pick and a 2027 first round pick. It looks like excuse me. The Broncos got a fourth rounder and Jalen Waddle. The Dolphins get a first, a third, and a fourth. So I think it's a good trade for the Dolphins. Honestly, they basically are swapping fourth rounders. The Dolphins get a first and a third. Broncos get Jalen Waddle. I like this move for both teams. Dolphins are kind of trying to retool and rebuild. Broncos just added a really, really good weapon to an already pretty good offense. An offense that already has a guy like Cortland Sutton out there. But you bring in Jalen Waddle, and I think Jalen Waddle will be that wide receiver one in that Broncos receiving room, which he hasn't really got the opportunity to do before. He's had to sit behind Tyreek Hill. He's had to deal with Tua Tagovailoa, who's seems like he's often injured throwing him the football. So now Jalen Waddle's going to get a chance, to kind of shine and prove himself as a leader of this Dolphins offense. As a leader of the Broncos offense. We'll see if the Denver Broncos are able to repeat as AFC West champs. I think they definitely have what it takes to do that. And adding Jalen Waddle only is going to help their case out. So, good move.